guys! Are you taking the PSAT soon and wondering what you can do to get as prepared as possible? If so, we're going to go over last-minute study tips in this video. I want to let all of you know that if you're studying for the PSAT, I have great news for you because you're probably also going to be taking the SAT soon. And if so, we have an awesome prep course that should be out later this fall. So keep posted at supertutortv.com/subscribe so that you know when that drops. We already have a course out for the ACT. That's called the best ACT prep course ever. We've helped students increase their scores up to 12 points with an average increase of 5 points. So go check that out at supertutortv.com. So let's get started with some PSAT last minute study tips. I want you guys to think of this as kind of like a to-do list. So if you're really serious about this, I recommend you get out a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper and start taking notes and create a little study plan for yourself for the next, 3 hours, 3 days, or however long you happen to have before your PSAT. So my first last minute study tip for the PSAT is to get to know the test if you haven't. I have a whole video that's really all about that I've already made, so I'm not actually going to get into great detail right now, and that's called How to Cram for the PSAT. In that video, I'm going to get more specific about exactly what to do so that you know the test, you get the test, right? You take a practice test, you kind of understand what's going on and really prepare yourself, because those are kind of the basics of preparation. And now let's move on to tip number 2. So my second tip, if you're last minute studying for the PSAT, is just make sure you know your math formulas. It can be tough to kind of try to assess everything that you're getting wrong and how to approach every kind of question just a few days before the test. But when it comes to formulas, those are something pretty concrete that you can study pretty easily. So we already have a video on 3 must-know formulas for the SAT. Remember, the SAT is just the longer form of the PSAT. The PSAT is the practice SAT, so they're the same thing, basically. So my tips for that also apply to the PSAT. In case you watched that a while ago, or maybe you haven't watched it, but you want to know what's in it, I will tell you really quickly. First thing that you need to know is your circle sector formulas. Then you need to know your vertex formulas for parabolas. And finally, it's good to have memorized all of those little formulas that are in the box at the beginning of every math section. I'm also going to add one more idea to knowing your formulas that isn't in our formula video, and that is knowing units and rate conversions. We actually covered a really tough unit rate conversion problem in our video that we released just a few days ago, last week on Thursday, and it's called the hardest SAT math problems. So if you do struggle with unit conversions or rates and you know, oh my goodness, yeah, I hate those problems, like distance problems and like ratios, all of that stuff, we have a really tough problem in the second half of the video, and I recommend you go check it out if that's an area you need to work on. The third tip that I have is know your grammar rules. Now, there are lots of grammar rules. There's probably 17 or 20 of them that show up pretty regularly on the SAT, everything from subject-verb agreement and pronoun agreement to verb tense or modifier use. But the one grammar rule that I find a lot of students tend to miss on the SAT and the PSAT is punctuation. When it comes to punctuation, comma use, colon use, semicolon use, and dash use tend to be the biggest culprits on this exam. So if you're going to review one piece of grammar, that's probably the area I would recommend for most students. So go do a little bit of research on those. You can get on Khan Academy and look up free SAT prep there if you haven't already. Create an account and you can go over some of those there. You can get on the internet and look up all those ideas. Make a list for yourself right now. Pause this video. Fourth tip, know that the reading section is not so obvious. So another thing that I think sometimes kind of catches people by surprise when they're taking the PSAT for the first time is that the reading section is way harder than they expect, because they're used to reading comprehension questions in English class that are like what I call bells from heaven. Most of the time in English class, you're not taking necessarily multiple choice exams with a passage that's open book. You're usually taking a quiz on your book, and you're not allowed to use your book when you remember all of those answer choices. So most of them are what I like to call bells from heaven, meaning when you read the right answer, if you read the passage at all, your brain goes ding, 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 and you know it's right. This test is totally different because it's evidence-based and because you're going to have to go back to the passage a lot. it's not going to be that easy to identify what's right and what's not right. So just be ready for that and be prepared for that. And one of the best ways to attack that is to know the strategies to employ when you're down to sort of two answer choices and you think both might be right. If you're wondering what some of those strategies are, we go over that in another video, which is my top tips for the SAT reading section. You can check out that reading video if you want to get into sort of the nitty-gritty of how to distinguish between really hard answer choices that both seem right. But just be aware that this is not going to be as easy as a lot of your tests at school might feel. Next tip is to have a strategy for attacking the passages. So there are two sections of the PSAT that you're going to take that include passages. One is the reading section and the other is the writing and language section. Together, they form the evidence-based reading and writing section. For each of these, I have a different strategy that I like to share with students in terms of how do you approach the passage. What I'm going to say for the reading section is you should probably read the passage first as quickly as you can while still understanding what the main idea of each paragraph is. As you go, I recommend that you circle or underline what you think are the most important ideas that really define the purpose of each paragraph, and really try to track what's that main idea in the passage. When it comes to the writing and language section, I recommend that you don't read the whole passage up front. It is not completely a reading comprehension section. It's a grammar test. So in order to read those, I recommend you kind of read as you go. Make sure you read the title and make sure you really pay attention to what I call framework. And what the framework is that's your topic sentences, your thesis statements, your organization, your title, right? If there's a thesis statement and it lays out like 3 ideas, and then you see paragraph 1 is idea number 1, paragraph 2 is idea number 2, guess what the lead out sentence of paragraph number 3 is probably going to be? That third idea that was way up in your thesis. So a lot of times, the questions that are hard on the writing section require you to zoom out and really have an understanding of what I call that framework, right? How is this passage organized? What are the main ideas? And how does each paragraph progress those main ideas? Those are things you're going to have to be aware of. And so make sure that you track that information as you go. So that's my best advice for those two sections. Make sure you have a good plan of attack when you approach those passages. And then finally, have a pacing strategy. And what I mean by that is one of the biggest mistakes that students make on the PSAT, because it is just for practice, is that they completely bomb on the way that they pace themselves. So don't be that person. Know that all questions are worth the same amount of points, and sometimes questions are not in order of difficulty. So just because a question is earlier doesn't mean it will be easier than a later question. That's even true in part on the math section, though it does kind of get harder as you go on the math section. There's a reboot in the middle of both the no calculator section and the calculator section of the math. And at that point in time, it gets harder, and then it resets and you go to open answer questions where you have to fill in bubbles and it could be anything, right? It's not multiple choice anymore. And at that reset point, the questions get easier. So know that that reset is coming. If you're stuck on some multiple choice stuff, page forward and start on the open answers if you're running out of time, because you might be able to pick up some points with those easier questions in that second half of the math section. The other thing that can happen is that you just can really barrel in too much on a single question. So don't let yourself get stuck on a single question. Make your goal above all to finish. Most of the time, finishing is going to render you a higher score than only doing half the test really carefully. That might not be true for all students, but in my estimation, on your first take of something, that's usually a better approach and can give you a little bit more of an accurate picture of what you're capable of. So going in, have a pacing strategy, know about how long you're going to take before you move on. I recommend that you have a watch or you use a watch. Make sure it adheres to the College Board's rules. We talk about what to bring to the SAT in another video, which is basically the same list for the PSAT, but make sure you have your pencils together, make sure they're sharpened. Don't depend on the crazy sharpener that might be in whatever classroom they stick you in. And most of all, good luck to you guys. Remember, the PSAT is just for practice, so unless you're trying to get that National Merit Scholarship, it's nothing to stress out about. And if you are on this journey again, I recommend that you subscribe to our channel. We'd love to keep you in the loop and help you in this process. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, comment if you're taking the PSAT, tell us what you think, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.